Hey everybody, Dr. LeGrand here, and today we're going to be talking about ADHD nootropics that eliminate your ADHD symptoms. And the best way to really tackle this, every time that I'm working with somebody with ADHD symptoms, whether it's focus issues, motivation, or even other things like depression and anxiety, and trying to look for nootropics that are going to be best work for you, it's always going to be first identifying the root causes, identifying why you have these symptoms, what's going on in the body chemistry, brain chemistry. So what I did is I put together two different case studies that hopefully they're very similar to what you guys might be representing. They're, different cases that I looked at to be able to help you kind of identify what I look at to make sure to really find the best types of nootropics that are going to help eliminate your ADHD symptoms. So the very first case is a middle-aged male in his 40s. And he was dealing with more than just your typical ADHD symptoms. He had also a slew of other different health problems. But some of the common things that he was definitely dealing with that are ADHD, he was definitely dealing with focus issues. He also had anxiety. He was dealing with low energy, lack of motivation and drive, which was causing some issues at work, trouble at work, poor memory. But he also, on top of that, had severe digestive issues, IBS, which stands for irritable bowel syndrome. It's a type of digestive issue, and then dealing with GERD. So having that heartburn, acid reflux constantly. And these were definitely very detrimental to him. And so first thing I wanted to do is, okay, let's understand why there is focus issues. What are some nootropics? What are some things? And also the poor memory and the lack of motivation. So what I usually like to do is to dive in, is to look at, first off, is look at the amino acids that build specific neurotransmitters, and also look at neurotransmitters throughout the entire body, not specifically the brain, but throughout the entire body, to be able to see, okay, where are some imbalances here? So that kind of gives them some guidance and direction. So in this case, after he ran his tests, he had low PEA levels, which is a precursor breakdown to dopamine, and also phenylalanine. And then on top of that, he had elevated levels of tyramine. I'll get to that in a minute of why those were elevated. And then he had elevated levels of dopamine. Interesting, right? It isn't always a dopamine problem. In this case, he had elevated levels of dopamine, which can cause anxiety and agitation when you have elevated levels of dopamine. He had low levels of norepinephrine and also epinephrine, which that can make it very difficult to manage anxiety and stress. He had elevated levels of tryptamine, which usually with high levels of tyramine and tryptamine, this has to do with more digestion. So usually there's going to be a digestive component. Remember, he did have digestive issues, and so it's also important to address those things. But to make sure that we're addressing these situations of the particular amino acids that are out of balance, and of course the different out of balance neurotransmitters, what I implemented is one, D-L-phenylalanine to help increase PA levels. I added L-theanine to help deal with his elevated dopamine, as well as his low norepinephrine and epinephrine levels. Those are really great for that, along with rhodiola. So that's why I implemented that. Now I added probiotics, and I'll explain more on another further test that I did with him. But typically, when I do see the elevated levels of tyramine and tryptamine, it's because the body's not digesting and processing typically tyrosine levels as well as tryptophan. So usually this has to do with some digestive. And so I did a further test, because it's always important to do further investigation, because he was dealing with digestive issues. Along with that, our gut is like a second brain. It is so critical to really look at digestive health, especially if your gut is not working optimally. Guess what? Your brain's not going to work optimally, because 90 to 95% of a lot of our neurotransmitters are actually made in the gut. People don't realize this. And makes sense of why you should be looking at the gut. And so in his case, there was definitely a lot of imbalance gut flora. So it was important to implement certain strands, as particular probiotics, to help balance out these and really have more of the expected gut flora that he wants more, to help really process and build a lot of different neurotransmitters. But also having gut health can also help with the immunity, energy, because remember, he was also dealing with low energy. So because I also wanted to take a step further, usually when it comes to IBS, irritable bowel syndrome, I usually find that a lot of times it usually has to do with stomach acidity. So in his case, his stomach acid was actually too low. And so I'll usually run his pH, and his pH was at 7.6. So I do this through urine pH, and this is just a good reflection of his stomach acidity. And because anytime it's above 6.4, I consider that more alkaline. If it's below 6.0, that's going to be considered more acidic. So in this case, he was way too alkaline. And because of that, I will usually add something like betaine HCl, pepsin, gentian root. These are also good different enzymes to help with inflammation within the digestive tract system. But HCl is what's going to help increase the stomach acidity. So that way his pH levels are more in that 6.0 to 6.4 range. So once I implemented that, a lot of his IBS symptoms dissipated, which was great because then he could actually consume a lot of foods because he was having issues with actually proteins and vegetables, which I needed him to consume more of, especially because he had low levels of PA. As well as norepinephrine, epinephrine, and some of the neurotransmitters that are essential for implementing a good protein in a vegetable diet. So once we able to implement that, that really did help. I did also add some pancreatic enzymes along with that. Usually that can be helpful as well. But I always do want to make sure, even though we're talking about nootropics, best nootropics, like those ones were the best ones for him that started making a difference as far as his focus went, his energy. But I also want to make sure you're implementing foods. So usually in this case, when I see that you run more alkaline, it is good to implement more bitter and sour foods. So, dark chocolate, 100% cranberry juice, leafy greens that are more bitters, grapefruit, lemons, limes. So sour and bitter foods are going to be really great to implement to do things more naturally. Then it was important to test, okay, why was he also dealing with low energy? Because that's also really important to look at when you're trying to identify what are the best types of nootropics. It's important to look at all aspects of the symptoms that you're experiencing with your ADHD and your overall health. That is how you're going to make sure that this does work for you specifically. So in his case, because he was dealing with low energy, I did want to test his cortisol. And his cortisol levels were one of the lowest I've ever seen, actually, when I run this test. All the way, straight in the really low range of in the morning, afternoon, and even early evening. The only time it was fine was, late in the evening, and he had a hard time, falling asleep as well. So in this case, what I will typically do is definitely do some kind of adrenal support. I do like adrenal desiccated, but I do like to alternate. You don't want to rely on just adrenal desiccated. I'll also use something like Drenamin to switch back and forth. They're both by standard process, or I'll use something like adrenal support by Vital Nutrients. But there's several different types of adrenal support that you can use. And I had him take it first thing in the morning and afternoon. I usually don't like taking it at night, even though it was low. But I was hoping, by taking it in the afternoon, it can kind of help with his energy. Because the reason you don't want to take it at night, because that can keep you up at night. You don't want your cortisol levels too high, and you want to be too dependent. So this is something you do for about 3 months, and then you want your body to naturally be producing the adrenal support, so you don't always need to be relying on the adrenal. This is just something you use temporarily, just to get your adrenals back up. I mean, your cortisol levels back up, and sure enough, it did improve his energy significantly to where his adrenals were functioning again. And then on top of that, because of his digestive history, and then of course the neurotransmitter level balance, I did want to test a full spectrum of his micronutrients. So it's testing all vitamins, minerals, amino acids. So in his case, the ones that did show up, because usually when people are dealing with IBS or digestive issues, they're going to have several other different micronutrient deficiencies. And especially with ADHD, we tend to be more prone with micronutrient deficiencies. So in his case, the ones that did come up that were low were vitamin B2, vitamin B6, which is very, very critical, because the activated form of vitamin B6 is P5P, which actually helps a lot the conversion process from going from L-DOPA to dopamine, also from tyrosine to L-DOPA. And also for serotonin. It is so, so, so critical. And if you have low vitamin B6 levels, that is going to cause a problem with helping building and modulating a lot of your neurotransmitters, and why you might also have low different neurotransmitters such as dopamine and norepinephrine. But in this case, as you saw, it had to do with more epinephrine and norepinephrine that were definitely low. And the other ones that were also were low, vitamin C. Vitamin C is also really critical for neurotransmitters, so it's something we definitely need to supplement. His vitamin D levels were also low. This could also contribute to his fatigue and low immunity, and so definitely supplemented all four of those. So definitely did a B complex, which is the activated form of all the B vitamins, vitamin C, and then high dose of vitamin D5 for just during the maintenance dose. And then summertime, usually I don't have people take a high dose of usually vitamin D, because you should be getting it more from the sun. So after that, I mean, it was a 9-day difference. Like his pretty much a lot of his symptoms. His energy was better. His mood was better. His motivation and drive was better. He wasn't having trouble at work. His boss was happy more with him. His anxiety was really dissipated. And then on top of that, his digestive complaints were gone. Like he felt great. He hadn't felt like this for years. And then the flip side that I want to kind of share is another case study with a woman that in her 30s, and she was dealing with a little bit more different from this other case study where she was dealing with more severe depression, where the other case he was dealing with more anxiety. This one, she was definitely dealing with more depression, mood changes, but she also was dealing with focus issues. She also had stress and anxiety. She had low energy, low motivation, poor memory, trouble at work. And the other thing with different with her was also not being present. So this was definitely a challenge for her, not knowing why this was happening, even with working with several different doctors, working with medications. She just felt like she was still just having all these symptoms. So the first thing I wanted to look at was, of course, always looking at neurotransmitters. I mean, not always case, but like in this case, when I see anxiety, depression, ADHD symptoms, focus issues, usually we want to look at neurotransmitters. And you could see so many that are low in her situation. PA's level, tyrosine's level, low. Tyramine is low. Dopamine is low. What else is low? She also had 3-MT, which is a breakdown of dopamine. And so all of these are low. So no wonder she was feeling significantly depressed. She was having issues with lack of motivation and drive and low energy because all these levels were low. But not only that, her serotonin levels were low. Her 5-HIAA, which is a breakdown of serotonin as well. Her GABA levels were low. Her glycine levels were low. I mean, no wonder she felt like this. No wonder she felt severely depressed because nothing was being addressed of what she really, really needed. Because the medications were actually making things worse for her, and her nutritional deficiencies and amino acids that actually help build a lot of these different neurotransmitters were not being addressed. And so clearly by seeing this, the things that we need to implement, one that I do like is called Dopa Boost. And the reason I don't give this to everyone, I only give this if it is necessary. So in her case, Dopa Boost has, remember I said vitamin B6, how critical it is for building a lot of different neurotransmitters. So it has that. N-acetyl-L-tyrosine because her tyrosine levels are low. That's why I like this one. Mucuna prunes, which helps build dopamine. Her dopamine levels are low. And then green tea extract, which is also great for low levels of dopamine as well. So those are that's why I implemented Dopa Boost. Also added L-theanine because L-theanine helps with low serotonin and also her low dopamine. It can also help with that as well. B complex. Usually when I see this many neurotransmitters are low, typically there's usually a B vitamin issue. And so I will incorporate activated form of B vitamins. I added the glycine because her glycine levels were low, and glycine is really important for also neurotransmitters. It does help regulate with mood. I had also L-tryptophan because her tryptamine levels were low. So tryptamine is a breakdown of tryptophan, and tryptophan also helps build serotonin. So that's why I added that. And then of course added DL-phenylalanine because of her PEA levels being low. So hopefully this makes sense of why these are specifically for her the best nootropics for her. Why? Because you clearly see the evidence. And by doing so, it made all the difference in helping her get the results a lot faster, where she was able to be more focused. A lot of her ADHD and depressive symptoms were dissipated, even with her anxiety. But still, there was some sort of further investigation because I wanted to. Usually, when we see low energy, and this is very common with people with ADHD, especially adults with ADHD, we want to make sure that we're also testing hormones. So she also had mood swings. So I took a step further than just get the cortisol. So in her case, cortisol levels were low on both sides. So I did add also adrenal desiccated first thing in the morning and afternoon, but also wanted to make sure because of the mood swings and stuff like that, that her other hormones were fine, which the most part they were. So most doctors will, if they ever do, will just run estradiol and progesterone. And they would have said, okay, you're fine. But there's another important hormone precursor, which is DHEA, which helps build estradiol and also testosterone. So this is more of a preventive thing, but it also can make issues when these are low to change things in the mood. Hormones impact our ADHD brain significantly. So I added DHEA, 25 milligrams with her to help improve these levels. And this did help with a lot with the mood changes. So by just implementing those, it was a night and day difference as far as she had her energy back. She felt like she could function. She had her motivation and drive. And her depressive symptoms were really gone, and her anxiety really dissipated. And so it's because of doing this further investigation. And that is really what it does take when you are trying to identify what are the best nootropics for you, because not one person is the same. I'll tell you that from me doing this for years, everybody is unique and every HC person is unique. And it's really critical to look at further investigation. So if you're someone that really does want to figure this out also for yourself, I would love to help you out. And because it does require further investigation, but it also requires what kind of testing do we need to do? And so this is where you jump on a book a consultation with me where I can figure out what testing, once I've looked at your medical history, met with you, and determine what are the best testing to implement for you specifically, because every person is different, as well as put an action plan together for your ADHD. And so what you could do is, what I'm offering is pretty much, if you don't realize, I had to figure this out on my own initially, and going to medical school is expensive, but you don't need to do that. I spend over $500,000 on continuing education in medical school, but that's something you don't need to do. You also, people don't realize this, when you are, research has shown when you don't treat your ADHD correctly, you will waste over $1 million in your lifetime because of missed opportunities, losing jobs, having executive functioning issues, and not actually treating your ADHD correctly. So I certainly don't want you to experience that. And so what I'm offering is just, you could book a consultation. This is where we can actually dive in deep and really understand your medical history, the symptoms and issues that you're dealing with, and determine what are going to be the best labs to implement, as well as putting an action plan for you together, as well as it includes a full-on in-depth questionnaire. So this really helps me identify really where the holes are within your health, your ADHD health. So also what's included, I do give you access, if you do purchase today, to the ADHD health course. So it's $297 value. So everything included, it's over $1,000 value, but you get everything for that for just 297 bucks. So all you got to do is just click on the link in the description below. Once you click on that link, it will take you to this page to purchase. Once you have purchased, then you will pick a date and time. And then once you've done that, then you'll fill out your information. It'll take you to the booking, the landing page, where this is very important. There's two things. You should be getting your confirmation email for your appointment, which will have the Zoom link for that time that you picked. And then the second is to actually activate your Practice Better account. This is our client online portal. This is where you will fill out the questionnaire, as well as upload any past labs you've done in the past year. And then make sure to book out the time, block out 45 minutes to an hour, depending on what you need. And then if you do have any past labs in the past year, you can upload that as well. Show up early. Once you've done that, then you will book that and just wait for your time when you meet with me. So if you are really wanting to tackle your ADHD, and you've been struggling and haven't understood why you're dealing with these symptoms, then click on that link in the description below so I can actually sit down with you, look over your medical history, and determine what kind of lab testing is going to be best to help really investigate your own problems that you're dealing with and identify the root causes of your ADHD symptoms and create an action plan for you. So like I said, click on that link in the description below. Thank you guys so much for attending, and I'll see you guys in the next live stream. Thanks. Bye.